Hey y'all,
How's it going, guys?
I'm Jay,
And I'm Christopher Nerd.
and we
And we
are
are
the
the
Bird
Bird
Brains.
Brains. Hey, I mean, it sounded good on my end, so
Yeah, we're
guess we'll
way off
see
on
which of
mine.
the two is right.
Well, welcome. I have a feeling this topic might get some first timers.
Yeah.
Um, because today we're going to talk about actually the most common pet bird in the United States, and probably,
I'd probably
I don't
say the
know.
world.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know. I don't know in other countries. Are they as popular as they are here?
Um, I mean, I've only been close to the United States, Canada, Mexico, El Salvador, Honduras are just a few of the countries that I've been to. I haven't been to any of the European or African countries. I've seen budgies there everywhere I've gone. I
Yeah,
know,
I have been over there, and I think I have seen budgies. I know I saw budgies in Italy.
yeah, I was gonna say I've seen, like videos of people like in India in the markets, and there's just cages lined up of budgies just crammed in there. Same with some of the European markets and the Central and South American markets. So I would probably dare say I'd put some money down saying that they're, if not the popular, one of the most popular birds throughout the world.
Yeah, and I know. I mean, they're in the United States. They're the number three pet. So you go dogs, cats, budgies. So
Yeah.
budgies or parakeets. A lot of people call them parakeets. Budgerigar is the full name, which
Australian
is
parakeet. Yeah,
yeah part
I've
of
got quite a few.
their scientific name. And the reason I don't like calling them parakeets is because parakeet, as a broader term, just means like your small seed-eating parrots. But typically they have a long tail, but you can take that all the way up to like your Indian ringneck is
Yeah.
technically a parakeet.
Yep.
And so you calling it a parakeet is kind of like sort of like the difference between calling it a pickup truck or saying like this is a Ford F-150, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different kinds of pickup trucks. So just saying I have a pickup truck doesn't really narrow it down. And in this episode, we're talking specifically about the budgie. Um, and I'll start with this. They're one of my absolute favorite birds.
Yeah.
They're spectacular for a
How long
lot
have
of
you had
reasons.
budgies for?
20 years.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah, so the first parrot I ever had was a cockatiel, but since I was 16, I've had a budgie.
Yep.
Um, and they are also they're definitely the first non-finch that I ever bred.
Same.
Um, and it's the first bird I ever had that was like a people bird that was my bird. So we've talked about
Yeah.
it in the heartbreaking episode, unfortunately, but like, so I had Rocket in high school and college, and now I have Bandit,
Yep.
and his wife Smokey.
And
So
they're
I did
getting
a.
pretty close to retirement, aren't they?
They
You've,
are.
you've had them for a good amount of time.
They're six.
Okay.
And I've talked to a couple of people about it. I'm going to be really picky, so I don't want to just tell anyone on this podcast, but I'm looking for someone, the right person to adopt them as a pair. So was hand raised. He's very friendly. He talks, says a couple words. He'll sit on your finger.
Nice.
Now he's very spunky. He's not like Mikey. He's very much like he'll sit on your finger and then you go to try to kiss him and he won't bite you, but he'll like give you the headbutt. So he's like, all right, like we're friends, but come
Yeah.
on, you know.
Yeah.
But when I go over to the cage, he'll come over and say hi, stuff like that. So he is friendly, but Smokey is completely. She's a breeder only, but
Yeah.
they're nice birds. I don't really have room. I actually kept a male from their very last clutch, and then my
Nice.
plan is to get an unrelated female and kind of keep the line going.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Um,
I like that.
yeah, same thing I do with my dog. So I just like, one day it'll be like my kids will have that line, right? So, but I need somewhere for Bandit and Smokey to go. So I got to find somebody who wants, and they have to stay together. I'm not going to break them up. So I got to find somebody who wants one pretty tame one and one not so tame one. But you know, that's the great thing about budgies. So they're not very hard to take care of.
Hmm.
Um, and that has some pros and some cons, right? They are pretty small, so their caging requirements are not huge. Their diet, if you're just going to keep one as a pet, you're really fine to do just seeds and the occasional fresh
Yep.
greens and
Very
pieces of
basic.
fruit.
Yep.
And then they're pretty hardy in general. I mean, I've seen some horrific stuff on Reddit of people, but as a general rule, they don't tend to get super sick. They don't tend to have major health issues besides like I would say like inbreeding type health issues that are caused
Yeah.
by sort of irresponsible practices on people's
Yep.
parts. And then they're really smart. They're one of the best talkers. They have a ton of personality. They like to
Oh
play with
man,
you. They like to
loaded with
cuddle.
them.
They are they really punch way above their weight class. I mean, if you compare them to most of any of the other small parrots, they're far and away the most interesting.
Absolutely.
And then they have at this point colors, just colors wise, there's every color under the sun. You can get a budgie in every color of the rainbow.
I was gonna say now it's like you can even get like blacks and purple. You know,
Hmm.
when we were young, those mutations weren't out yet. It was mostly your greens, yellows, blues, and whites. But now, yeah, it really maybe not a brown. I don't know if I've seen a brown
I don't.
parakeet, but
I
any
haven't seen
bright
it.
color of the
No.
rainbow.
You know, I have.
Have you?
I've
Oh,
seen
good. Well,
browns. Yeah,
so I'd probably
lace
say
wings.
the only color that parakeets don't have is like a pink and a purple, or pink and red. You know,
Yeah,
we've
I was
got
about to
purple,
say.
but no pink and red. But everything else, any of your other bright colors, there's a
I saw.
parakeet out there that
So
has
I
it.
have a funny story about that actually. So I was at Rhonda's, um, which is my one of my local bird stores. Great store in Milton, Florida. If you haven't checked it out, if you're local to
Nice.
Northwest Florida, South Alabama, South Georgia, great store, worth the drive. And I saw a budgie with a pink like front cap, and you could probably
Oh
guess where this is
wow.
going.
Yeah.
And I was like, I think I might have grabbed it and run back to Rhonda's office, and which is supposed to be employees only, but I've weaseled my way to where I can walk back there now. Um, and I was like, "Is this a pink budgie?" Like I was just gonna buy it right then, right? No plans. So like, I've never seen this before, so I'm gonna get one. And she laughed and she explained, "No, it's not. Um, she it had she had given it some cardboard to play with that was like from a package that was pink, and it had gotten its water wet
Oh
with
wow.
that
Okay.
cardboard
Okay.
and dyed like food coloring dyed its head pink temporarily. And I was like, man, this is cool. And I've seen people do stuff like that where I've seen
No,
like
yeah.
spice finches,
Uh-huh.
green spice finches where somebody's either doused them in food coloring or feeding them weird or something. I don't know. I don't
They
do it, but
they did that all the time in El Salvador for during Easter for baby chickens. They'd have
yeah.
greens, pinks, blues. They'd
Mhm.
dye them as their little chicks. I
I've
would
seen
not
that in,
recommend that. Please don't do that.
yeah, that's not, it can't be good for them. I don't know that it's
Yeah.
bad for them, but don't, would you like it if somebody dyed you green for a month? Like, don't do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't think I've ever seen a pink, but about every other color. And the wild type, in and of itself, the wild type budgie is green bodied
Mm.
with like
Yellow
yellow and
face.
blue on its face with the dots, and then a
Hmm.
long green tail. So even the wild type, which I still see from time to time,
Yeah.
is a gorgeous bird. And that's what Rocket was that. He was just the
Nice.
standard wild type budgie. And it's,
So one of my most favorite memories. So my dad, his aviary growing up, he had a full section with just budgie parakeets. And, at one point we probably had up to like 30, all different colors. One of my favorites was the wild type color. And when the males are in breeding condition, man, they like their feathers just freaking shine. They look so
yeah,
cool. And
they
their
glow.
nose, that blue nose gets this super nice glossy look, and their beaks as well. Like they're a solid looking bird, and when they're in breeding condition, man, and the sun hits them, like they really are some of the prettiest birds out there. And for how simple their coloring is, they're incredibly beautiful, and mixed with the personalities that they come with. they're pretty hard birds to pass up and to not just simply enjoy. I love sitting out there and just listening to them chatter. Like that's one of my favorite bird sounds is just hearing the budgies chatter with each other. It's just this constant little chatter. And their mouths are going and their beaks are or their heads are shaking back and forth with each other. It's like they're telling each other they're so full of stories they can't shut up. It's like
Yeah,
they're
that's exactly right. They got a lot to talk. It's like they always have like the latest gossip. They got a lot to talk
yeah,
about.
yeah.
Yeah,
You see those lovebirds over there? Maybe see what they're doing
yeah,
in that corner. It's like
yeah.
that's what they were doing at my dad's house. So
Yeah, so I have a funny story about budgies actually. So I've already got my degree, so I don't think they can take it away. But so I went to the University of Georgia, go Dogs, and I lived in the dorm freshman year, which everybody has to, and I had Rocket and his mate Eloise, and I decided I was going to sneak them into the dorms. And I looked in the rules. There was nothing that said you couldn't have, or maybe there, no, there was nothing that said you couldn't have birds. It said like
way
no,
to bend those rules, Jay.
right. It said like no dogs or cats, but there was no specific bird rule. Um, but I was still like, yeah, this is probably not going to be allowed. So the way I put them in a travel cage and then I zipped it into, I think I might have said this before on the podcast. I know I've told you this. I zipped it into like a rolling luggage thing and I just rolled them past dorm security like I was, home from the weekend and nothing to
That
see
is
here.
so
And I
awesome.
had them for a while and people would come see him. They were friendly. They'd sit on my shoulder, and like Halloween, I was a pirate and I had the parrot on my shoulder, the whole thing. And then somebody turned me in, and my RA, who lived right down the hall from me and absolutely knew that I had birds, came to me with a weird look on his face, and he said, "Do you have birds in your dorm room?" And I kid you not, Rocket is on my shoulder at the time. And I was like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, I got an email from my boss saying that you've been reported for having birds. So tomorrow I am going to come inspect your room to see if you have birds. Actually, super solid of the guy.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
his name was Ren. Ren, shout out. If you watch this. But so I had to quick rush him to over to a different dorm for a friend there, and then I took him home that weekend, and then when sophomore year I lived by myself and they came back. But and now the next my sister's a year younger than me and a bunch of her friends, also my friends, went to Georgia, and one of my friends was in orientation and they were going over the dorm rules, and there's a specific line in there the next year, no birds. And she sent me a picture of it and said, is this you? And I was like, yeah, that's because of me.
He blew it.
So so sorry, incoming freshman at the University of Georgia. You're making a great choice. Best 4 years of your life, but no birds in the dorms.
And Ren is now the new dean of housing,
I
so
wish.
maybe cut you some slack. Just kidding.
Yeah. No, yeah. Someone needs to come up with like a seeing eye parrot or something,
Yeah,
some
there
some
you go.
excuse to have their bird in the dorm,
I
emotional
love that.
support bird.
I love
But
that.
yeah,
So
go ahead.
I was gonna say, so we've talked about the different colors, some of the
Mhm.
personality of the budgies. Maybe Jay, tell us life expectancy and maybe some of the basics that you need to have to keep one of these parakeets, whether in a mixed aviary or in a cage. What are your recommendations around that, and how can we keep them alive?
So life expectancy, there's really two ways to answer that question about any parrot. And right, like I've got Einstein, I've got all kinds of birds. I get asked all the time, well, isn't he going to live to be 80 and all that? And so I actually was talking with the nutritionist up at Hari about this. So if you, I think with the budgie, we can use budgie as the example. If you did everything right and the bird had like a perfect life and you did their diet perfect and everything, the right bird, you might get to 15. You might. I think the average lifespan of a budgie in captivity is probably 5, 6, 7, somewhere in there,
Yeah.
um, which is a bummer. And that's kind of one of the downsides of budgies. They're easy to breed. They're really, really common. They're really readily available, so they are cheap.
Yeah.
And so they get sold often with like a budgie starter kit, which is like in my mind, basically like a travel cage. It's not really what you want. But I think
Yeah.
um, budgies are very, very social birds, and they're not loud like hurt your ears like a big parrot, but they have a lot of personality, and they do make a lot of chittering and squawking, and they definitely sing in the morning and play. So I do. They are one of those birds that I say either play with it every day, or if you can't, get to.
Get it a partner. Get it a
Hmm.
partner. Yeah.
And you can do same sex. You don't have to breed them. You don't
Yeah.
even if you have a pair, you don't have to breed them.
Yeah.
But they do benefit from a lot of interaction. And in the old days, they used to say, well, you just get them a mirror. But
Yeah.
imagine how crazy you'd go if you were in solitary confinement with just a mirror to talk to, especially if you'd never seen a mirror before, right?
Oh man.
So if you're a person that has a mirror for any bird, don't don't do
Yeah.
that. That you're just going to make them go crazy. So yeah, I mean, for me, I don't clip wings personally. So Einstein has like a busted wing and some stuff. As a general rule, I don't like to clip. So my budgies aren't clipped, but I have clipped in the past. I'm not anti-clipping.
Yeah.
Uh, as long as you either you know what you're doing or you take it to a vet or someone that does know what they're doing. I've also seen some really horribly sad
Yes.
hack jobs, but um, they definitely like to climb. Like Rocket, who was clipped for really his safety when I was in high school, I had like his cage kind of across the room built into some of the finch cages. I had like a Rocket section. And then on the ground, hanging off my bed, I just hung like a piece of rope, like
Hmm.
a half-inch claw, and he would climb up, and I had a little play stand for him up there, so he on his own
Yep.
could go back and forth. Um, so the opposite of finches, right? Budgies do better with like kind of your classic bird cage, and I'd say for two budgies, what are you looking? Maybe if you're gonna let them out and play with them, then I'd say you're
Yeah.
fine with probably 2 feet by 2 feet by 18 inches.
Uh-huh. Yeah, with the caveat of they are getting out daily and
Hmm.
getting exercise outside the cage. If not, I mean, the rule of thumb is bigger is always better. I've housed a pair of like breeding parakeets in the past, budgies, and I believe my cage was like 4.5 feet long, 3 wide, and then it was like 6 tall. So it was taller than it was wider. But try and go as big as you can. Um, Even if you do let your birds out every day, I still would recommend give them a nice, decent sized cage. Especially if you have multiple of them, then it gives them a chance to get away from the other if they want to. Get some privacy, things like that. Yeah, bigger is always better, but those probably standard sizes that you could start out with.
Right, and I mean, I think a lot of people who get a budgie, it's like, what do they have at the pet store there? And it's like, just get the biggest
Hmm.
one you can. The price difference, you might say, well, that's $60 and the small one's $30.
Yeah,
Like, it's $30 extra for like something this bird has to live its whole life in. Spend the money,
yeah,
right? And
yeah.
then as
And
far
and
as
they're fun to tame down. Like,
and they
you
tame
know,
down pretty easy.
yeah,
They're
I was gonna say
smart. They're
budgies
smart.
are great birds to tame down. I've tamed down both adults and young. Young are easier to tame because they seem to be a little bit more
Mhm.
moldable, but I've tamed down several adults before and they've became really great birds. And they can make some pretty strong connections and bonds with their caretakers. So that's an added bonus to any budgie in the house is not only are they fun and full of personality, they can create some really strong bonds with multiple people and be very tame and let multiple people handle them, which is really cool.
Right, and if you're someone that lives in like an apartment and you want like that parrot interaction, but you can't have the noise, budgie all day
Yeah,
long. And sometimes
absolutely.
people overlook them because they're like, oh, that's just a parakeet or whatever.
Yeah.
They are one of the best talkers, one of the most
Uh-huh.
social. They're small enough that they can't really hurt you. I mean, I've had them break the skin on my fingers a few times, but
Yeah.
as a general rule, they can't. They're not gonna like the wrong macaw will take your finger off, right? Budgies
Yeah.
aren't gonna do that. right? They're
Yeah.
not going to destroy your house.
Right.
Um, and then another huge perk here that I just made me think of, their poop is very small and very
Yes.
manageable. It's really even
Yes.
smaller than finch poop.
Uh-huh.
It comes out like just a little dot, right? So
Easy to clean and take care of, which is nice.
yeah, they're really a great bird all around. The only I actually can't think of a downside to budgies other than they can be rough with finches
Yeah.
and other types of birds.
Yep.
And then all the other downsides are just like people related. Like they're too cheap and undervalued for what they
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
Um,
I would say, Jade, that's the only reason why right now I don't have budgies. And I've had them in the past and I loved them. I love breeding the different colors with them, taming down the babies, selling them. But yeah, they majority of your budgies don't get along well with your finches. I have had kept some with finches and they've done okay. But I'm almost I err more on the side of I don't want the risk. And so I don't have budgies right now because I don't have a separate cage to keep them like you do. My only other downside that I can think of, Jay, outside of like the people things that you just mentioned, they do like to chew.
I was about to
So
say they can be destructive.
yeah, so put some chew toys in there. They'll chew them up. If you've got them in, like, most of my area aviaries that I've built are wooden aviaries, right? And so they love to chew along the corners of the wood.
Mm.
You put a nest box in there, they'll chew around the entrance of the nest box. Not to the extent that it completely destroys it, but they do like to chew. That is something that they do quite a bit. And so if you don't want them to ruin anything, don't put any wood near
Yeah,
them,
don't.
or constantly be observing them if they're out of the cage in your home, stuff like that. You don't want something destroyed like wires or things like that. And I think it's more curiosity and just fun personality that they chew. It's not necessarily to destroy it. I think it's just
No,
curiosity.
they're
And so,
kind of just little ADD monsters
uh-huh,
in
yes.
a good way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. As far as diet, it's really easy. So just like a good quality budgie mix, which like most grocery stores in the United States have it.
Yeah.
Um, something like that, and then a couple times a week, if you're not going to breed, I would do like a vegetable fruit
Hmm.
chop. So like a couple pieces of apples, some kale, bananas, things like that. Try to avoid junk food or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're small. So like I remember, so like one of Rocket's favorite thing, he loved like salsa chips. So I'd
Uh-huh.
give him like a piece of salsa chip, half the size of my pinky nail,
Yeah.
and he would just go nuts for that. But you don't want to give him too much.
Yeah,
Um,
they're opportunistic eaters, right? They'll eat
yeah.
they're open to trying anything new that comes into
Mhm.
their living space. So yeah, it's good. It can be good, right? Introducing lots of different fruits and veggies, but then also on the other side, if you're keeping them inside your house, they'll probably take the opportunity to chew on some of your human food that's probably not as good for them, and
Right.
I
But
wouldn't err.
broccoli, things like that, that's good for them. They're all over it.
Yeah.
And I mean, really, they like to bathe typically.
Yes.
You can go on YouTube right now and find a million videos of budgies dancing under somebody's like half turned on sink.
Yep.
They're not huge on like a bath as far as like getting in a bowl. They'll do it, but if you give them some running water, and I haven't posted it in a while, and I need to do it. I'll try to do it this weekend for them and take some video. Um, I built a budgie shower, so
Nice.
I took a plastic bin and a PVC pipe and made like a overhang, and then I drilled some holes in the bottom and put a pump on one side, so it made like a little budgie shower, and they'll go in that and rinse
That's
off and
awesome.
have fun.
I
Um,
love that.
they're really, I mean, I've seen them at bird shows where they're riding around on a remote control
Uh-huh.
car and stuff like,
Yeah. They're smart, intelligent birds.
yeah, they're really an underrated bird. And, and people always, we can talk about, this is a good time to talk about it. So you're in your brain, I saw a great talk on this at AFA. In your brain, the hippocampus is what makes you you. It's your personality, the part of your brain that is like, that is doesn't do things like move your arms or like do stuff, but the part that like is your personality, your sense of humor, all that. In a human, this is actually where that thing you only use 10% of your brain. So in a human, the hippocampus is like 10%, and the rest of your brain does. It's not true that you only use 10%, but that's the 10% that's your personality. So
Gotcha.
on birds, the hippocampus is over 50% in a parrot. So it's kind of like, if you to use like a car analogy, you could have like a classic V8 muscle car. It's this big engine, a bunch of displacement, and that's how you make your horsepower. Or you could be like a Fast and Furious guy and have a little four cylinder with like two turbos and nitrous and all this stuff. That's their brain. So
Yeah.
even though their actual brain is much smaller than ours, a much bigger chunk of it is devoted to being a goofball and being funny and fun and smart and talking to you.
That
And
explains it.
and so even though they're a lot physically a lot smaller, they are really they have a lot of personality and they're a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Um, as far as breeding goes, I've got a ton of short videos. I don't think I've ever done a how to breed a budgie video, and maybe I need to with my next
You sh-
pair when I get them
you
going. I'll
should.
do it.
I've got a
But they,
couple, but they're a few years old.
yeah, so they take a parakeet nest box, which good size is what, probably 6 inches by 6 inches by 10 inches.
Yeah.
They like a bare bottom. In the wild,
Uh-huh.
they would just use like a tree hollow. And
Yep.
then the way you know that your budgies are paired and getting ready to breed, you'll see them kissing.
Hmm.
Looks like they're making out. And what they're actually doing is the male will feed the female. And he's demonstrating his fitness and his willingness to do that because when they actually get to breeding, the hen will go in that box and she really doesn't come out except to
Yeah.
drink water.
Yep.
And so she'll like Smokey during the breeding season back when she really was breeding heavily, she would stay in the nest box, I mean, for basically 6 months straight. It'd be rare that I'd even see her. And so they'll go in there, they'll typically lay a clutch of between like 4 and 6.
Yep.
Most I ever had get to the perch from one clutch was 5.
Nice.
And then she does all the incubation and all the early feeding, and then you'll see the male sit. He doesn't typically go in the nest box at all. He'll sit on the end.
Sits at the entrance. Yep.
Sometimes when the babies are bigger, you'll see him go like shoulders in and feed the babies directly. But for the most part, he just feeds her and then she kind of redistributes the food. And then he doesn't go in the nest box really at all.
Yeah.
And then once they fledge, which I think, I can't remember, I want to say they incubate for like 19 days
Hmm.
and then they fledge like 3 weeks ish,
Hmm.
I think is right. And then um, once they fledge, the majority, he basically does all of the feeding
Yep.
because
And
she's
she
going to
and
stay
she
in the
lays
next
again.
box and she'll lay again. Right.
Yeah.
And it takes them a clutch or two to get it figured out. Sometimes you might lose some babies or have some babies get struggle to get out of the nest. They just lay a simple white egg. But once they get in the rhythm, they
Yeah.
really breed very well. If you're breeding, you're going to want to do egg food and things like that.
Yeah.
But they're not difficult to breed really, and they mate sometimes out in the open quite,
Yes.
um,
Quite frequently.
yeah, and it's you can go back on my page and see it.
You have to
It's
shield the kids' eyes. Got to
Yeah,
keep
it
it
is
PG.
something to see. I'll say that. It is, there's no doubt as to what's going on.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I'd probably say, just in case you're brand new to budgies, so your males, their nose is blue, so that's how you can
Yeah.
tell the male. Females, their nose is it's like a brown, dull kind of, I don't know, grayish color. When they go into breeding condition, their nose gets darker, kind of like a darker brown, grayish color. But
Some of them it even gets like thick.
yeah, yeah, like it
Mhm.
puffs up, and so that's how you tell your sexes when the chicks come out. All of their noses are kind of like a whitish color, And then as they mature, then your males get blue and your females get like that gray brown color. And then the cool thing with budgies, like we mentioned at the first video, there's all sorts of rainbow colors, right? And so that is one of the fun things is you can put different colors together. You can have a blue male breeding a yellow female, or a green male breeding a white male females. Just like you can mix any of the colors up, and you can get a pretty wide range of colors of chicks within just one clutch. I've had in the past when I've bred some, I've had literally, four chicks. One's green, one's blue, one's yellow, and one was white. Like I literally had four different solid colors. You have pieds. Some have mixes of colors within them, stuff like that. You have crested ones. There's a pretty wide range, which
There's
makes it
English
fun. Yeah, you've got your English budgies, which are really fat and plump.
and have like
Some
big jowl
yeah,
faces. Yeah.
they look like little mini teddy bears, that always are grumpy. But yeah, they they're a lot of fun. I feel like your options for budgies are almost endless when it comes to colors and breeding, taming them down, keeping them in the house, outside of the house due to their hardiness. Like in Utah, we kept our budgies outside year round in the middle of winter, and we just put a very thin sheet of plastic up and made sure their water wasn't frozen. I mean, they can become quite hardy birds, and so that's a perk and a benefit to cater to most of the globe, and your circumstances. So that's probably one of the reasons why they are one of the most popular birds throughout the world.
Yeah, I've kept mine outdoors, and I mean, in everything from the, down into the 40s, 30s, up to 120, and
Yeah,
they're okay.
yeah,
They're really tough. They're hardy birds. They'll do when they're too hot, you'll see them sit there like kind of like they're like bowing up on you, but
yep,
really they're just keeping their wings off their body to stay a little bit cooler. And then if
yeah,
they're cold, they'll go sit with their back to the sun, like a solar panel to warm up. They're
yep,
smart, so they on their own will help you out. Um,
yeah,
yeah, I really love them. I can't see ever not having them. And I thought, somebody said to me, I told them I was going to retire Bandit and Smokey, and they're like, well, why don't you get linealated or do something else? And it's like, man, they're a lot of people don't think they're a big deal or they're nothing special,
right,
but
yeah,
I really love them, and they can be hand fed pretty easily.
yeah,
Um,
yep,
if you're going to have them as pets, that's what I'd recommend is
yep.
getting some hand fed ones, and
Super good with kids. They're not nippy. Once you tame them down, very rarely do they bite you. I mean, all growing up, I had budgies as pets in the house, even, with the aviary outside with all the, non-tame ones or wild ones. But I rarely remember a case where my budgies bit me and bit me hard. Like they do really well with kids. They love to just sit on your shoulder and go crazy, as you're walking around the house or playing outside, whatever it is. Like they enjoy the ride because they are such social birds, which makes it that much better to have them as a pet, whether you have one or multiple of them. I think there's a lot of perks there, way more
yeah,
perks than disadvantages.
the only time any of them have ever bitten me is like if I have to grab them to clip their nails or something, I'm really having
Uh,
to hold them. And even
yep,
then, it's just like a please let go. It's not
yeah,
vicious by any
yep,
means. It's just
yep,
they're just scared. Yeah, they're all around really just a fantastic bird. If you're someone that's looking to get into parrots, great first parrot. Absolutely
absolutely,
great. Great way to learn a lot of the nuances. They want to spend a lot of time just kind of cuddled up under your neck.
yes,
They're I can't say enough good stuff about them. I'm definitely Team Budgie.
yep, same here, right there with you, man.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Well, um, if they want to ask a question about budgies, Chris, where could they find you?
well, I'm gonna send them your way. No, just kidding.
Yeah,
Yeah. Even though I don't have budgies, I have a lot of experience raising budgies as a kid and as an adult. Love them. Probably will have them again some point in the future as I build up the space. But yeah, reach out to me at Bird Nerd for Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. happy to answer any questions for you. And if I can't answer it, I'll direct you to Jay. So where can they get a hold of you at, Jay?
I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, which sucks, YouTube, and Reddit, and it's all the Javiary or the underscore Javiary. And if you can find one of us, then you found both of us because we obviously
Yeah.
talk and we can get you in touch. What birds do you have available right now, Chris?
That's a great question. I've got lots of babies coming out, so I've got quite a few zebras available, Amadina chicks available. I just had some star babies come out, so I will hopefully have some stars down the road. And I just set up all of my other pairs of stars, so I'm hoping by fingers crossed by end of summer having getting some more stars out. And Borks. I just had some Rubino Borks come out, some Opal Borks come out, and Rosy Borks. So I've got quite a few Borks at the moment. So if anybody's interested in those, shoot me a PM and we can make something happen. I just shipped out two Lutino Borks this week that to Colorado, and they arrived safely, and everything looked good there. Again, credit to Jay for getting me into the shipping world. So branching out, putting my big boy pants on, and hopefully can get some birds to you guys outside of Utah. So how about you, Jay? You got anything available in your
Yeah,
aviary?
so I've got two DNA sex male hand fed Rosie Borgs. I used to say I don't
Nice.
hand feed. Well, I made friends with a lady here who does hand feed, so we worked out a deal, and she's going to be hand feeding my chicks from here on out. So
That's awesome.
she's actually bringing them back. She's keeping one for breeding for her, but the other two, I'm getting them back on Saturday, and then they'll be available. And then I've got more forks on eggs, and then I've got hopefully some teals here in a minute. I've got a ton of diamond doves right now, if anyone's interested. I've got um, five older ones that are half related, so I can make a couple pairs, and then I've got one, two that just hatched, and two more that I checked their eggs today, and they're fertile as heck, so they'll hatch
Nice.
soon. I've got some crested societies. I'm hoping to have more Gouldians soon. I have Gouldians now, but they're all sold out. Those ones are already purchased. And then hopefully more shaft tails here shortly.
Mm. I do
And
have shaft tails. I did forget about that.
yeah, and then I think hopefully some stars here soon. Oh, and
Yes.
canaries. I've got some canaries that are due to hatch any day now too. So I'll
Wow.
generally take.
Even in the heat, they're still breeding for you, huh?
Yeah, I've got
Good on you.
both of my pairs actually laid, but I checked one pair today. She's been sitting for like 3 weeks and they weren't fertile. So I went ahead and pulled them. So hopefully she'll lay again. But I've got one hen she's just um, like a super tough chick, and she
Nice.
doesn't care. Cold, wet, hot, doesn't care.
The
Um,
one thing I've noticed with the canaries when it gets hot, your males are the first to like go infertile. It's when you start seeing clear eggs. So if your eggs start coming clear, it's usually your males
that's why,
because they're
and
hot going into molt.
yeah, my main male did go into a molt last month. He had a clutch. They had to put out a successful clutch, and then he molted. But he's finished the molt. He isn't singing a ton, but my other male is. So we'll see. But
Yeah,
I mean, I got six canaries to the perch this year so far. So if I don't get any
nice.
more, I still made canaries.
Yeah,
Um, and then maybe this fall, right before breeding's over, maybe they'll get back into it. But we'll see.
love
And
that.
then, oh, and I have a ton of zebras right now. Uh, I have like 15 zebras. So if anyone wants a bunch of zebra finches, hit me up. We'll make a deal. And
Yes, yeah.
I've got some really pretty ones right now. One of my hens. I didn't know this. So I got some new hens this year, and she's all white. And the male's chestnut flanked white, but they are throwing out some incredible pieds. And
Oh,
then,
cool.
so here's a new one. And I meant to ask you this, Chris, and it's good to ask on the podcast. Have you ever had a baby zebra fledge all white with a silver beak?
Yes.
So
Yep.
that happened to me for the first time
So
today.
that will be so that one's so it's not a chestnut flanked white. It's a pied white, but it's all pied. and its
It's
beak will be
all
a
white.
lighter pink. Yep.
Yeah, that's its beak is like silverish pink. I'd never seen that before, and for it almost looks like a silver Gouldian. For a second,
Yeah.
I was like, "What are you?" And then I was like, "Oh, okay, I know what you are." And it's
Yeah.
it's from that big clutch of seven. It's so interesting. So in
Oh,
that
cool.
clutch, there are normals, fawns, that all pied white, and pieds
Wow.
in that clutch.
That's
So
impressive. That's
the
awesome.
genetics are just bonkers town in there. Um, but yeah, they're doing great. So, and then I'm sure I'll get some more spice finches. And then my parrot finch hen should come out of quarantine here soon. So I may even get some parrot finches before the season's done.
Sweet. That'd be awesome.
So hopefully maybe some sea green action. So we'll see.
I love that.
But yeah, um, just chugging along. And we've had three big storms since I redid the roof on the aviary and dry as a bone in there. So
Hey, that means you did a good job. A plus.
took took me 3 years and probably a sum total of 10 days of backbreaking labor, and I finally got it figured out. So,
That's
better
awesome.
late than never.
That's all right. That's good. Keep the birds dry, and then they'll keep breeding for you and keep their toes clean so they're not mud on the ground. So
There you go. All right. Well, we'll catch you all on the next one. Thanks for
I
listening.
appreciate you guys. We'll see you.